The sun filtered through the half-drawn blinds, casting striped shadows across the hospital bed where my mother lay. Her skin, once vibrant and flushed with life, now matched the sterile white sheets beneath her. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. My name is Elise Tremaine, and I've spent my entire life standing in the shadow of my brother, Daniel. The golden child. The chosen one. The one who walked away when our mother needed him most. Any change? The soft voice of a nurse interrupted my thoughts. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. How could I explain that the woman lying there, the woman I'd spent the last 72 hours watching over, had never truly seen me? That despite everything, I was still the afterthought, the contingency plan, the backup child. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss options, the nurse continued, checking the 4-line. Is your brother coming today? The question pierced me like a physical blow. No, I replied, my voice barely audible. He's not. The nurse's face fell slightly, a flicker of judgment passing across her features before her professional mask slipped back into place. Well, it's good she has you. Good she has me. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 42 years, having me had never been good enough. As the nurse left, I reached for my mother's hand. It was cool to the touch, papery and frail, so different from the strong hands that had once guided Daniel through every obstacle while leaving me to find my own way. He's not coming, Mom, I whispered, uncertain if she could hear me in her sedated state. But I'm here. I've always been here. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Leah, my closest friend since college. Any news on Daniel? I sighed, typing back a quick response, still nothing. Tried his wife again. She says she's working on it. 3 days had passed since my mother collapsed in her kitchen, her heart failing just as she was preparing Daniel's favorite pie for his birthday, a birthday he hadn't bothered to show up for. 3 days of me sitting beside her hospital bed while Daniel remained conspicuously absent, his phone going straight to voicemail. His wife, Carolyn, claimed he was on a business retreat somewhere with spotty cell service. A convenient excuse, but one that rang hollow after so many similar disappearances over the years. The door opened again, this time revealing Dr. Harlow, her white coat pristine, her expression carefully neutral. Ms. Tremaine, she began, gesturing for me to follow her into the hallway. We need to discuss your mother's condition. I stood on shaky legs, casting one last glance at my mother before stepping outside. The latest tests confirm what we suspected, Dr. Harlow said, her voice low. Your mother's heart is failing. She needs a transplant, and soon. I leaned against the wall, trying to process her words. How soon? Weeks, not months, she replied. We've put her on the list, but at her age, it's complicated. What can I do? I asked, the words tumbling out automatically. It had always been my response, what can I do? How can I help? When would it ever be enough? Dr. Harlow's expression softened. Being here is important. And, we'll need family medical history. Comprehensive testing. Any relatives who can be tested for compatibility, though direct donation isn't usually. My brother, I cut in. Would he be a better match than me? Possibly. Siblings often share more genetic markers. Is he available for testing? I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. That's the million-dollar question, doctor. That's what it's always been. Back in the room, I sank into the chair beside my mother's bed and pulled out my phone again. Daniel's contact stared back at me, his smiling face, arm slung casually around our mother at her 70th birthday party last year. A party I'd planned entirely on my own while he'd shown up an hour late with an expensive gift and stolen the show. I pressed call, already knowing what would happen. "You've reached Daniel Tremaine. Leave a message, and I'll get back to you when I can." "Daniel, it's Elise. Again. Mom's condition it's worse than we thought. She needs a transplant. The doctors need to see you. They need to run tests. Please, just call me back." I ended the call, fighting the urge to throw the phone across the room. How many messages had I left? How many times had I begged him to step up, to be the son our mother believed him to be? My mother stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. For a moment, she seemed confused, her gaze darting around the sterile hospital room before landing on me. "Elise," she murmured, her voice raspy from disuse. "I'm here, Mom," I replied, leaning forward to take her hand. "Daniel?" The question came automatically, as it always had. "Where's Daniel? Have you heard from Daniel? When is Daniel coming?" I forced a smile. "He's on his way, Mom. Don't worry." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it was a kindness I'd perfected over the years. Shielding her from the truth about her perfect son, the missed birthdays, the broken promises, the gradual disappearances that had become longer and more frequent as she aged. "He promised to come for my birthday," she said, her eyes already drifting closed again. "He promised." "I know, Mom. He'll be here soon." As she slipped back into unconsciousness, I felt the familiar ache in my chest, the pain of never being enough, of loving someone who had always looked past me to the son who perpetually disappointed her but somehow remained the center of her world. I remembered a childhood filled with these moments. Daniel's empty chair at the dinner table as Mom kept his food warm, making excuses for his absence. The way she'd light up when he finally appeared, forgetting the hours of worry, the broken promises, the tears she'd shed waiting for him. And me? I was the reliable one. The one who showed up. The one who remembered birthdays and anniversaries. The one who called every Sunday without fail. The one who'd put her own life on hold when Mom fell and broke her hip 2 years ago, spending weeks helping her recover while Daniel sent flowers from abroad. Yet somehow, I remained secondary. An afterthought. The child who existed in the negative space around my brother's golden aura. With a heavy sigh, I picked up my phone again and dialed Carolyn's number. "Elise," she answered, her voice tight. "I was just about to call you." "Where is he, Carolyn?" "Really?" A pause. "I don't know." "What do you mean, you don't know?" I hissed, keeping my voice low for my mother's sake. "He left 3 weeks ago. Said he needed space, time to think." "I thought he was with you and your mother." I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. "You haven't heard from him in 3 weeks?" "He texts. Says he's fine. Needs time." Her voice cracked slightly. "I didn't tell you because I was embarrassed. Because I thought he'd come back." The pieces fell into place, Daniel's unanswered calls, his missed birthday visit, his wife's vague excuses. He hadn't just forgotten his responsibilities. He had run away from them entirely. "Mom needs him," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "She needs to see him." "I know," Carolyn replied, sounding defeated. "I know she does." After hanging up, I stared at my mother's sleeping form, rage and despair battling within me. The golden child had abandoned us both, and still, she asked for him. Still, he was the first name on her lips when she woke. I thought of the tests Dr. Harlow wanted to run, the transplant list, the weeks, not months, timeline. I thought of my own life, put on hold yet again to care for the woman who had never truly seen me. And in that moment, standing in the sterile hospital room with the afternoon sun casting long shadows across my mother's frail form, I made a decision. If Daniel wouldn't come to us, I would find him. I would drag him back if I had to. Not for me. Not even for him. For her. Because even after all these years of being the second choice, the backup child, the reliable but unremarkable daughter, I still couldn't bear to see her heart break one more time, figuratively or literally. I gathered my things, pressed a gentle kiss to my mother's forehead, and headed for the door. I had a brother to find. Even if I had to tear apart the perfect image our mother had of him in the process. The drive to Daniel's house felt like a journey back in time. Every mile brought memories rushing to the surface, childhood arguments in the back seat, teenage Daniel's sullen silence as Mom tried to engage him, the way she'd always reach back to touch his knee but never mine. I parked in the driveway of the sprawling Tudor-style home my brother had purchased 5 years ago, another symbol of his success, another reason for our mother to beam with pride when she showed his photos to her friends at the senior center. My son, the investment banker, she'd say, while I stood in the background, my achievements in environmental law barely warranting a mention. Carolyn opened the door before I could knock, her usual polished appearance notably absent. Her blonde hair hung limp around her shoulders, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "I've been going through his things, trying to find something. Anything." I followed her into the immaculate living room, where bankers' boxes now sat stacked against the wall. "When did you know he was really gone?" I asked, sinking onto the pristine white sofa. Carolyn's laugh was brittle. 2 days after he left. He called from a blocked number, told me not to worry, that he needed to find himself. Like he's some kind of college dropout instead of a 45-year-old man with responsibilities. Did he mention Mom at all? She shook her head. I told him about her birthday coming up, but he just changed the subject. I should have known something was wrong then. I thought of our mother, lying in that hospital bed, still asking for him. Still believing he would come. "What have you found?" I gestured to the boxes. Financial statements. Emails. Receipts. Carolyn pulled a folder from the top box and handed it to me. "He's been planning this for months, Elise. Setting up accounts, making withdrawals." I flipped through the pages, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. Daniel hadn't just walked away on impulse. This was calculated. Deliberate. "There's something else," Carolyn said, her voice dropping. "Credit card statements. Hotel charges." She didn't need to say more. The implication was clear. "He's not alone," I stated flatly. "Her name is Vanessa. I found emails." Carolyn's voice was hollow. "They've been seeing each other for almost a year." A year. While our mother bragged about her perfect son. While I picked up the slack, as I always had. "Do you know where they went?" Carolyn shook her head. "The last charge was at a hotel in Portland 3 weeks ago. Nothing since then." I closed the folder, my mind racing. Daniel had resources, connections. He could be anywhere by now. "I need to see his office," I said, standing up. Carolyn led me upstairs to Daniel's home study, a masculine space with dark wood paneling and leather furnishings. It looked untouched, pristine. "I haven't been able to access his computer," she admitted. "It's password protected." I sat at the desk, running my fingers over the smooth mahogany surface. Unlike the rest of the house, which bore Carolyn's tasteful decorating touch, this room was purely Daniel, from the Harvard Business School diploma on the wall to the collection of vintage fountain pens displayed in a glass case. His password, I murmured, staring at the login screen. Have you tried his birthday? Of course. And our anniversary. And his social security number. I thought for a moment, memories surfacing. Try Avalon. Carolyn looked confused. What's that? The name of our childhood dog. The only living thing Daniel ever showed consistent affection for. She typed it in. The screen remained locked. Try Avalon 0917. September 17th was when we got him. The screen sprang to life. How did you know? Carolyn asked, amazed. I shrugged. I was always watching him. Trying to understand what made him special. What made him the one she loved more. The confession hung in the air between us, raw and painful. Carolyn squeezed my shoulder briefly before stepping back to let me work. Daniel's desktop was meticulously organized, folders labeled by year and subject, emails sorted into categories. It was the work of a man who lived his life in compartments, who kept everything in its proper place. Check his emails, Carolyn suggested. Maybe there's something about where they were going. I opened his email client, scrolling through the most recent messages. Most were work-related, but in a folder labeled personal, I found what we were looking for, correspondence with a real estate agent in Maine. Listen to this, I said, scanning the email. The lakeside property is exactly what you described. Isolated, fully furnished, and available immediately. Keys will be at the location as requested. Maine? Carolyn's voice cracked. He's hiding out in Maine while his mother is dying? I continued reading, my anger building. The emails detailed a 3-month rental of a remote cabin, paid in advance. The perfect place to disappear with a mistress while ignoring all responsibilities. There's an address here, I said, jotting it down. And a map. You're going after him, Carolyn stated. It wasn't a question. I nodded, already calculating the drive time, the arrangements I'd need to make. Mom needs him. She needs his help with the transplant testing. That's not all she needs, is it? Carolyn's gaze was knowing. She needs to see her golden boy one last time. The bitterness in her voice mirrored my own thoughts so perfectly that I had to look away. I'll go with you, she offered. I shook my head. No. This is something I need to do alone. The truth was, I couldn't bear to have a witness to what might transpire when I finally confronted my brother. The years of resentment, of feeling second best, of watching our mother make excuses for him, it had all built up inside me like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Besides, I added, someone needs to stay with Mom. In case. I couldn't finish the sentence, the possibility too painful to voice. Carolyn nodded, understanding. I'll go to the hospital. I'll tell her you're bringing him back. Don't, I said quickly. Don't make promises I might not be able to keep. Back at my apartment, I packed a small bag, clothes for a few days, toiletries, the address and map I'd printed from Daniel's computer. I called Leah to explain the situation, asking her to check in on my mother while I was gone. Are you sure about this? Leah asked, concern evident in her voice. Driving all that way, confronting him alone? I don't have a choice, I replied, zipping up my bag. Mom might not have much time left. She deserves to see him one more time. And what about what you deserve, Elise? When does that come into play? I paused, the question hitting a nerve. What did I deserve? Recognition? Appreciation? Love that didn't feel like an afterthought? This isn't about me, I finally said. It's about her. But as I loaded my car for the 12-hour drive to Maine, I couldn't help wondering if that was entirely true. Was I doing this solely for my mother's sake? Or was there a part of me that needed to confront Daniel, to finally ask why he had always been able to walk away while I stayed behind, picking up the pieces? The highway stretched before me as I headed north, the landscape gradually changing from suburban sprawl to rolling countryside. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee, my mind replaying moments from our childhood, Daniel's baseball games that Mom never missed, even when they conflicted with my debate tournaments. The way she'd display his mediocre report cards on the refrigerator while mine, full of A's, were acknowledged with a distracted good job before being tucked away in a drawer. I remembered the Christmas when I was 12 and Daniel was 15. I'd saved for months to buy Mom a silver charm bracelet. Daniel had forgotten to get her anything, so he'd hastily scribbled a coupon for 1 day of yard work. Mom had cried over that homemade coupon, calling it the most thoughtful gift while my carefully chosen bracelet sat forgotten on the coffee table. Daniel never did the yard work. I did, quietly, a week later when Mom mentioned the garden needed attention. She'd assumed Daniel had fulfilled his promise and praised him for it at dinner. I said nothing, as usual. Rain started to fall as I crossed into Maine, the wipers creating a hypnotic rhythm that matched the pounding in my head. According to the GPS, I was less than an hour from the lakeside cabin where my brother was hiding from his responsibilities. What would I say to him when I finally stood face to face? How could I make him understand what was at stake? The rehearsed speeches I'd been crafting during the long drive suddenly seemed inadequate, hollow. The road narrowed as I turned onto a gravel path leading deeper into the woods. Pine trees loomed on either side, their branches heavy with rain. The cabin appeared through the mist, a rustic A-frame structure with large windows facing what I assumed was the lake, though it was obscured by the downpour. A sleek black BMW was parked in front, confirming Daniel was here. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I pulled up beside it and cut the engine. For a moment, I sat there, listening to the rain drumming on the roof of my car. Then, gathering my courage, I stepped out into the deluge and ran to the cabin's covered porch. The door opened before I could knock, revealing a woman, tall, slim, with dark hair cut in an elegant bob. She wore expensive loungewear and an expression of alarm. "Who are you?" she demanded, blocking the entrance. "I'm looking for Daniel Tremaine," I said, water dripping from my hair onto the wooden planks of the porch. "I'm his sister." Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. "He didn't mention a sister was coming. He doesn't know I'm here. It's an emergency." She hesitated, then stepped aside reluctantly. "He's on a call. Business." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Business. While our mother lay dying, while his wife sat by the hospital bed he should have occupied, he was conducting business from his hideaway with his mistress. The interior of the cabin was exactly what I'd expect from my brother, luxurious under the guise of rustic. Plush sofas, a state-of-the-art entertainment system, a kitchen that belonged in a high-end catalog. "Daniel," the woman called out, her voice carrying up to the loft area. "Someone's here to see you." Footsteps sounded overhead, and then Daniel appeared at the railing. He looked different, his usually clean-shaven face now sported a short beard, and he'd lost weight. But his eyes, those were the same. The same eyes that had always known how to charm our mother, how to win forgiveness no matter the transgression. Those eyes widened in shock when they landed on me. Elise? What the hell are you doing here? The casual indignation in his voice snapped something inside me. Mom is dying, I said, the words coming out flat and hard. Her heart is failing. She needs a transplant. She needs you. Daniel came down the stairs slowly, his expression guarded. How did you find me? That was his question? Not how our mother was doing, not what the doctors had said, but how I had tracked him down. Does it matter? Mom has been asking for you for days. She collapsed on your birthday, Daniel. While she was making your favorite pie. A flicker of guilt crossed his face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. I needed space, Elise. From everything. From the expectations, the demands. The responsibilities? I finished for him, my voice rising. The basic human decency of answering your phone when your mother is in the hospital? The woman, Vanessa, I presumed, cleared her throat. I'll give you two some privacy, she murmured, disappearing into what must have been the bedroom. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. You don't understand, Elise. You've always been able to handle Mom, to be what she needs. I can't, I'm not built that way. Built that way? I repeated, incredulous. What are you talking about? You're her favorite, her golden child. You always have been. He laughed, the sound so bitter it startled me. Her favorite? Is that what you think? That I'm somehow privileged in her eyes? Are you serious right now? My entire life, I've watched her make excuses for you, praise your smallest efforts while ignoring my biggest achievements. I've been the reliable one, the one who shows up, and still, you're the first name she says when she wakes up in that hospital bed. Daniel sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. You don't get it, do you? All those expectations, all that pressure to be perfect, it's suffocating. You've always had the freedom to just be yourself. Freedom? I was shouting now, decades of resentment pouring out. What freedom? The freedom to be invisible? To have every milestone overlooked because you decided not to show up for dinner again? To plan Mom's 70th birthday party alone because you were too busy, only to watch you waltz in late and steal the show? That's not fair, Daniel protested. I've had my own struggles, my own. Save it, I cut him off. I don't care about your existential crisis or your midlife affair. Mom is dying, Daniel. She needs you to come back, to be tested as a potential donor match. She needs to see you. He stood up abruptly, pacing the room. I can't go back, Elise. Not now. Not yet. Can't or won't. Both, he exploded. I can't be who she wants me to be anymore. I can't live up to this perfect image she has of me. And I won't pretend anymore. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my brother's face. The brother who had always gotten away with everything, who had never faced consequences, who had been loved so completely by our mother despite his constant failures. You know what, Daniel? For once in your life, this isn't about you. It's about Mom. It's about being there for her in what might be her final days. You're there, he replied, his voice dropping. You're always there. That's enough. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's enough. After a lifetime of never being enough, of always coming in second, he had the audacity to tell me I was enough now, when it was convenient for him, when it absolved him of responsibility. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's not enough. Not for her. She needs her son. She needs you to step up just this once. Daniel turned away, staring out the rain-streaked window. I can't, Elise. I just can't. In that moment, looking at my brother's back, his literal turning away, something shifted inside me. The anger, the hurt, the years of feeling inadequate, they didn't disappear, but they distilled into a cold, clear resolution. Fine, I said, reaching for my car keys. Stay here with your mistress. Hide from your responsibilities. I'll go back and do what I've always done, pick up the pieces, be there for Mom, make excuses for your absence. I moved toward the door, then paused. But know this, Daniel. If Mom dies without seeing you one last time, if you deny her that closure, that's on you. And no amount of running away will let you escape that truth. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. I walked out into the rain, not bothering to shield myself from the downpour. The cold water felt cleansing somehow, washing away years of trying to understand, of making excuses, of hoping things would change. My brother had made his choice. Again. As he always had. And I had made mine. It was time to stop living in his shadow, to stop measuring my worth by my mother's inability to see me clearly. Time to go back not as the second choice, the reliable but unremarkable daughter, but as the one person who hadn't walked away when it mattered most. As I drove back through the storm, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I had done everything I could. I had tried, as I always had. Now I would return to my mother's side. Not for Daniel. Not even for her. For myself. The drive back felt both longer and shorter than the journey up. Exhaustion pulled at me, but a newfound clarity kept me alert. I called Carolyn from a rest stop, explaining that Daniel wouldn't be coming. I'm sorry, she said, her voice tired. For what it's worth, I always thought you were the stronger one. The words touched me in an unexpected way. How long had I wanted someone, anyone, to see that? To recognize the strength it took to stay, to keep showing up, to love without proper acknowledgement? How's Mom? I asked, changing the subject. No change, Carolyn replied. She asks for him when she's awake. Of course she did. Some patterns were too deeply ingrained to break. I'll be there by morning, I promised. Get some rest. The hospital corridor was quiet when I arrived, the first light of dawn barely seeping through the windows. I'd driven straight through the night, stopping only for coffee and fuel. Carolyn was asleep in the waiting room, curled uncomfortably in a chair. I touched her shoulder gently. Go home, I said as she blinked awake. Get some real sleep. You found him, she asked, her voice hoarse. I nodded. He's not coming. She didn't seem surprised. Did he at least ask about her? Not really. Carolyn gathered her things, her movements slow with exhaustion. What will you tell her? I thought for a moment, considering the question. The truth would hurt my mother deeply, yet another life felt wrong. I'll tell her he can't come right now, I decided. It's not entirely false. As Carolyn left, I made my way to my mother's room. The soft beeping of machines greeted me, a rhythm I'd grown accustomed to over the past days. My mother looked even smaller than I remembered, her body seeming to shrink beneath the hospital blankets. Her eyes were closed, but at the sound of my footsteps, they fluttered open. Elise, she murmured, her voice weak. You're here. I'm here, Mom, I said, taking her hand. I never left. Her gaze moved past me to the door, searching. Daniel? Did you bring Daniel? I swallowed hard, preparing myself for the conversation I'd rehearsed during the long drive. But before I could speak, Dr. Harlow entered the room. Ms. Tremaine, she greeted me with a nod. I need to speak with you about your mother's condition. I followed her into the hallway, dread building in my stomach. The transplant, Dr. Harlow began, her voice low. Time is running out. If your brother hasn't been located. He has, I interrupted. But he's not coming. I paused, gathering my courage. What are the other options? If he's not available for testing? Dr. Harlow's expression was grave. At your mother's age, with her condition, the options are limited. We can test you, of course, but sibling matches are generally better. Test me, I said without hesitation. Do whatever tests you need to do. I'm here. I'm available. She nodded, making a note in her chart. I'll schedule them immediately. But Ms. Tremaine, I need to be clear about the odds. Just do the tests, I insisted. Please. Back in my mother's room, I found her more alert, her eyes fixed on the doorway as if still expecting Daniel to walk through it. Did you find him? She asked, her voice stronger. I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. I found him, Mom. He can't come right now. Her face fell, disappointment etching deeper lines into her already worn features. But I need to see him. Before. I know, I said gently. But I'm here. I'm getting tested today to see if I can help with the transplant. She blinked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You would do that? Of course I would, I replied, surprised by the question. You're my mother. Something shifted in her expression then, a recognition, perhaps, or a realization. She squeezed my hand weakly. You've always been the reliable one, she murmured. Always there when I needed you. The words I'd longed to hear for so many years now felt hollow, coming too late and under such dire circumstances. Why wasn't that enough? I asked before I could stop myself. Why was Daniel always the one you looked for first? My mother's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Elise. Is that what you think? That I loved him more? Didn't you? The question hung between us, raw and painful. She shook her head slowly. I worried about him more. That's not the same as loving more. You always made excuses for him, I said, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. You celebrated his smallest efforts while overlooking my biggest achievements. Because you were strong, she whispered, a tear sliding down her weathered cheek. You didn't need the same validation. You always knew who you were, what you wanted. Daniel, he's always been lost, struggling to find his place. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this perspective with my lifetime of feeling second best. So I got less attention because I was more capable? How is that fair? It wasn't, she admitted, her voice breaking. It wasn't fair at all. I see that now, too late perhaps. I leaned on your strength, took advantage of your reliability. And in doing so, I failed to show you how much I valued those qualities. The honesty of her words stunned me. After decades of feeling invisible, of silently resenting my brother's golden child status, to hear my mother acknowledge the imbalance was both validating and heartbreaking. I thought Daniel was the one you loved best, I confessed, my own tears falling now. The one you were proud of. I was proud of both my children, she insisted. But I expressed it differently. With Daniel, I celebrated loudly because his successes were rare. With you, I expected excellence because you never gave me reason to doubt it. That was wrong of me, to place that burden on you. Dr. Harlow appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Ms. Tremaine? We're ready for your testing now. I stood, wiping my tears away. "I'll be right back, Mom." She caught my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Elise. Thank you. For being here. For always being here." The testing process was a blur of needles, questions, and medical jargon. I sat through it all, my mind still processing the conversation with my mother. Had I misinterpreted her actions all these years? Had her differential treatment of Daniel and me been born not of favoritism but of misconceived notions about what each of us needed? It didn't erase the hurt, the years of feeling overlooked, but it cast them in a new light, a light that allowed for complexity and nuance rather than the black and white narrative I'd constructed. Hours later, Dr. Harlow found me in the cafeteria, nursing a cold cup of coffee. "Ms. Tremaine," she said, sitting across from me. "I have the preliminary results." I braced myself, preparing for the worst. "And?" "It's remarkable, actually. You're a compatible match for your mother. Not perfect, but better than we could have hoped for, especially given that you're not a sibling." "What does that mean?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means we can proceed with the transplant evaluation. It's a rigorous process, and there are risks to consider, but..." "I'll do it," I said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Harlow studied me for a moment. "This is a major decision, Ms. Tremaine. There are significant risks to your own health. I need you to understand that." "I understand," I cut in. "But she's my mother. And for once, I'm not just the reliable daughter picking up the pieces. I'm the one who can actually help." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of additional tests, consultations, and preparations. My mother's condition stabilized slightly, giving the medical team time to thoroughly evaluate both of us for the transplant procedure. I spent hours by her bedside, our conversations deeper and more honest than they had been in years. She shared stories from her own childhood, reflections on her parenting choices, regrets about understanding the unspoken dynamics that had shaped our family for decades. It was as if the imminent surgery had stripped away all pretense, all the carefully maintained facades we'd both hidden behind. "I was so afraid," she confessed one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid that Daniel would disappear completely if I didn't hold on tighter. Instead, I pushed him away." I held her hand, feeling the fragile bones beneath paper-thin skin. "And me? What were you afraid of with me?" Her eyes, clouded with medication but still sharp with awareness, found mine. "That you'd never need me the way he did. That your strength made my role as a mother superfluous." The truth hung between us, both painful and liberating. All those years of feeling invisible, and now I understood, my independence, my resilience, the very qualities I'd taken pride in had somehow created their own barriers. On the morning of the surgery, as nurses prepared us in adjacent rooms, my phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. "Elise," his voice was hesitant, strained. "Carolyn told me. About the transplant. About what you're doing." I closed my eyes, too exhausted for anger or recrimination. "And? I should be there," he admitted. "I know that now." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should." A long pause followed. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Not just for now, but for everything." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I thought about forgiveness, how it comes not in grand gestures but in small moments of understanding. My path forward wouldn't erase the past, but perhaps it could transform it. "Ms. Tremaine," Dr. Harlow said, meeting me at the threshold. "Are you ready?" I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. I've always been ready. As the anesthesia took hold, my last thought was of my mother's words from days before, "You've always been the reliable one." What once felt like a burden now felt like strength, like purpose. In saving my mother's heart, perhaps I was finally finding my own.